the roll be taken.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Chair Brian Caffarelli,
I am here.
Vice Chair Christopher Brogan,
Present.
Marlene Batista.
Present.
I don't see Jay. Pamela Iacono, John Matola,
Here.
and John Nguyen.
Present. All right,
Okay.
thank you. And for our next item, number 3, the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
and
and to the republic for which it
it
stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right,
Is Steve on?
that's what I was just about to ask.
I don't see Steve.
Let me text him. I want to also take this time to, again, say thank you to the public for your understanding that we had to reschedule from last Wednesday. It was beyond our control, but appreciate you receiving the light notice and joining us today. And let me find out where Steve is.
I thought I just saw him pop on, but I guess not.
He's right
There he
there,
is.
guys.
Here he is.
Okay.
He's here.
Oh, yay.
Oh, he's on.
Let's just give him a second. Hey, Steve, how you doing? You're muted.
He's on. You're on mute.
Oh.
I was at the Connecticut bar all day,
Right.
not a drinking bar, doing my continuing legal education.
Well, good.
Now you're
Hopefully
here
you
with
learned a
us.
lot. So we have called the meeting to order and taken the roll and done the pledge. So we are on agenda item number 4, the approval of the minutes. So they were in the backup for today. Has everybody had a chance to review them, and are there any comments or edits, changes, revisions? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to approve those minutes from the last meeting, June 2nd. John Matola, seconded by Pam. All those in favor say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The minutes are approved. Then next would be item number 5, continue post-public hearing review and discussion from our June 6th meeting. So there's a couple things here. When we last stopped, we were going to take up minority representation, that issue, which we're going to begin with, and then we're going to hear from our counsel, Steve Mednick, on the concepts that we had agreed to at the last meeting, and he was going to be drafting language as well as any other cleanup items. I expected this to be a relatively short meeting, as we had anticipated last time. So are there any comments from the commissioners before we go down that path? John Matola.
Just to give everyone a heads up, after we talk about minority representation, while we're still on the RTM, I'm going to make a motion. And I just wanted to let you know. So I think we should get that over with first instead of going back to it. That's all, Brian.
Sure thing. That makes sense. Okay, sounds good. So I will, so we'll move on to that topic, and I'm not sure who had planned to speak on it. Was that Pam or John? about, okay, John.
I'll, on the minority representation, I would make a motion to remove it from the proposed charter. And not to go through this in long detail, but basically for the reasons that were expressed at the public hearing a couple of weeks ago, and for the many emails we've received, I don't think the public wants that. And I would make that motion to remove it.
All right, and I understand and agree, and I'm going to second that motion. And I will, after the motion now has been moved and seconded, I will open up to any discussion if there is any. I think we've had a lot, but certainly we'll entertain anybody's comments before we vote on this. Pam?
Thank you, John, for the motion, and Chairman Cafarelli for the opportunity to speak to it. I will support the motion based on the fact that it's caused such controversy and angst out in the public. But I do want to just express how disappointed I am, how distorted that proposal became. And I know there was a difference of opinion with some folks here on the commission, which I 100% respect fully. But there were some members of the public that I think took this particular provision and just really politicized it to a place where it really wasn't representing what it was intended to do. And I just want to say for the record that I find that disappointing. This was, for me, a chance to look at something from a bipartisan perspective. And again, I know there's a few commissioners that felt a little bit differently about that, and I respect them very much and their opinion on that. But the political discourse on this particular item has just become so vile. I don't want it to ruin the rest of the charter. And, you know, we were clearly told that by two people. So I think that's unfortunate that is what's going down, but it is what it is. And, you know, thank you for the opportunity to speak on the item.
Okay, thank you. Anything further? All right, seeing no hands, then I will take a vote on the motion to remove minority representation. Oh, John Wynn.
Just a question for our council. If the motion is voted and approved, the effort to remove that from the existing document is minor, significant?
Minor. It's one, I think it's one place.
Okay. I thought it might be more than one place, but okay.
I will
Chris?
check, but I think it's, I'm looking at 3.2 A1B. I will double check it and make sure it's stripped out completely, but I think that's it.
And Brian, as long as thank you, Councilman Mednick. Brian, I agree with what Pam expressed, and it is disappointing how some aspects of this have been communicated, and I'd say communicated unfairly regarding what the intent was. But you know, it is strange as to we can make this work in so many of our other boards and commissions, and even up to the Board of Selectmen level, and we make it work effectively so that minority voices are heard in our town management, our town legislation, and to not have that same accord with the RTM, it's not right, in my opinion. I'll just leave it at that. So thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Okay, I think Chris Rogan had his hand up, then I see you, John.
Yeah, just one technical comment. I appreciate Commissioner Wynn bringing up what to take out. I think, Steve, 2.8B2, take a look at that also. If I'm reading that right.
Yep, got it.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
John Matola.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. And just, I respect what Pam and John have said. I think a lot of people just see it a little differently on the RTM as opposed to townwide boards and commissions. I think that's the difference on minority representation. So I just wanted to pipe in with respect to that. I've said it in the past too, so I don't want to repeat myself. So thank you so much for hearing me out on that.
Okay. Anything further? All right, all those in favor of the motion to remove minority representation from the document signify by saying aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries.
Okay.
All right, John Matola, you had another issue to bring up.
Yes, one more on the RTM. I would propose to change the language. We have in there currently that there shall be 30 members of the representative town meeting. I would ask that we amend that to go to 40 members. And again, my thought process behind that is a couple of things. One, we heard from a lot of people that they didn't want to reduce the number of RTM representatives. By putting 40 in the charter, we are in fact reducing it from the current language that says 56. So we're putting it down to 40. I think that's a compromise in this document if we can go there. And I just think it's important to allow the RTM to govern itself. But I recognize some of the comments and statements that many of you have made over the last couple of months. So that's the reason why I'm proposing this. I think if we we use the 40 member as opposed to 30, I think we'll get a lot of support from the public with respect to that. And then we will allow the RTM to decide its size after that. So that's my motion. And I think it would be section 3.2C. And if I'm correct, Steve, it would be section 2.3B to change that from 30 to 40 members. So that's my motion. Thank you.
All right, is there a second to that motion? All right, if the motion's not seconded, we can't really do anything with it. So seeing no second to the motion, we're going to move on.
Okay.
Thank you. So at this point, I would like to turn it over to our counsel, Steve, to kind of go through, if you're prepared and if you think that that makes the most sense, Steve, to go over the changes based on conceptually what we had discussed last time, as well as any other cleanup that may have that you may be recommending before our final vote on a document to recommend to propose to the Board of Selectmen.
I'm not going to go over every little errata
No.
change, but I'm going to go over things that I think occurred at our last meeting to make sure that everybody is on the same page. So we start off at 1.5 D, and this, and tell me if I did this at the last meeting. I think I might have, but if I did, we'll pass over it quickly. This is a sentence that was deleted at the recommendation of the vice chair in the fair and equal treatment provision. It dealt with impugning and reputation. Is everybody okay with that one? I think we did it at the last meeting. I just want to be double sure. I don't want to miss anything that might have occurred.
Where are you, Steve, again? 5D?
1.5.
1.5D. 1.5D.
So that's page 8 of
Gotcha.
Everybody okay?
Yeah, I believe that that's, yes, I am good. Anybody have anything to the contrary? Good.
1.6B, next page. And again, if I made this comment, if I fix this at the last meeting, let's move over quickly. There was language at the public hearing regarding the REL Institute, meetings on civility, and the underlined language in the red line reflects the speaker's concern and wanted to make sure that we made it clear what the intent was here, that we want to build community relationships with increased civility and participation in public meetings. And I just wanted to make sure that's language I took from the REL Institute and thought it was really good public testimony, and I thought it was worth recommending to you. Is everybody okay with that?
Yeah, I think this is language that we were looking to see. So let's just, all those in favor of accepting this language, aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed?
Aye.
Marlene, are you, I lost you somewhere. Carrie's
I'm
in.
here.
Okay. All right, good.
The next one is in C2, just under there, the adoption of rules. Now, I know I discussed this, I think a member of the Board of Education wanted to make sure that we weren't mandating rules for each board or commission. And I proposed language, and I thought there was some discussion, and it's possible that my notes did not pick it up, but I established a standard that the rules would be adopted by a 2/3 vote of the members of the board or commission. You want to make sure that they're not imposed by a simple majority. And I have, following a review by the town attorney, I'm not sure that is necessary. He raised that issue with me. We might end the sentence after board or commission, but I added the sentence, and I'll tell you why, and you could tell me whether you wanted the clause in or not. I want to make sure that the rules that are being established are in accordance with best practices in parliamentary procedure and in accordance with open meeting requirements of the general statutes and the charter. I thought it was important to state that somewhere in here. It's one of the reasons I wanted the 2/3 standard. Whether it needs a town attorney review, I'll leave it to Jim to weigh in on that if that's a concern of his. But I wanted just to see where everybody was on that language.
Pam?
I'm good with it. I think you should leave the town attorney reviewing it too as well, just to make sure that nobody misses anything. Doesn't hurt.
Was my thinking.
Good. Okay, so all those in favor of this?
One
John
question,
Wynn has a
Brian,
comment.
2/3, Brian, Steve, 2/3 of is a very difficult hurdle for us seemingly as a town to get over in voting on things. I'm curious if there's something that might be, what is the magic of the 2/3, and is there an alternative that might help us act on something rather than just having it in the charter and then not being able to actually enact it?
The reason you normally put a super majority in something like this, John, Commissioner, is to make sure that it's done on a bipartisan basis, so that the rules should be as clear as they could be. And the worst case scenario we have is that there's the default is Robert's rules. We have rules to govern, but if a committee decides or a commission decides they want to have their own rules, you should have a broad consensus and not a partisan consensus. A simple majority would give whichever party has the majority the ability to dictate the rules, and not saying that any party would dictate rules that are unfair, but the 2/3 just assures that no one is dictating the rules. And I felt comfortable recommending it because there's a default. It's not like we're leaving the boards and commissions naked if they can't adopt rules, but if they are going to adopt rules, they really should come to a broad consensus.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just, on that, I like it because it is, deviating from the default, and it's in line with suspending the rules, which in other bodies requires a 2/3 or supermajority vote to take measures that are considered, extraordinary like that. So I agree with it.
Okay, thank you.
Everybody okay?
That looks like we got a vote on that one. Yep.
All right, the next change, well, it's not a change, but I know that two of our intrepid, erudite, hardworking commissioners provided some language today for 2.4C, the Board of Education provisions. Commissioners Mottola and Iacono provided some language, I think, from Bethel and
New
another
Canaan.
town.
New Canaan?
Yeah, and let me explain, because I talked to the vice chair about this. He raised a question. These are very difficult sections to read and to understand. The difference between what we have here in Fairfield and what I modified slightly to provide for more competition in the year when four candidates are running. And the proposals, I think, the way I read them, I was at a conference and I was supposed to be paying full attention to my continuing legal education, but I figured reading your homework was continuing legal education, so I looked at it. Is the difference is in mine, in these proposals, we limit the number of party nominees to the number of seats that a majority can hold. And I think in the others, it permitted the parties to nominate more than that. And what you eliminate in the current language is the specter of people winning a majority vote, losing an election. And state law permits that. And that's the reason for the distinction between, I saw that as the distinction between the two. This is a provision I'm sure we can continue to look at when it's before the Board of Selectmen. But I think that the way the language works right now, I put a couple, the underscores are language that that is in the current charter that didn't make it to this charter that I thought still made sense. So I put it back in with regarding to the declaration of the minority victory. So that's my explanation for the distinction. I'm happy to, obviously, you guys have the votes, so let me know what you want to do.
I'm okay with it based on what Steve just explained. It's just so complicated. It's hard to. I don't know what your thoughts are, John.
I just used this language for another town, so I hope it works. Their town attorney liked it. I'm doing I go to a charter meeting from this meeting, and the language is going to be discussed at that very meeting. And I took this from other towns that I've worked with and other towns that I've reviewed over the years. So I think it's workable. I'll continue to look at it. We should all look at it while it's even at the Board of Selectmen level. If there's any defect, anything wrong with it, let's make sure we figure that out. I think it works well. I'll pledge to work with the town attorney to make sure that he's comfortable with it as well. But I think it does work.
Can I just, that's fine. I think it needs to be looked at the Board of Selectmen, but can I just, if everyone has and I'm going to take 2 minutes, 5 minutes. If you have a piece of paper, let me just run this by you. So under the first provision, and I'm being very simplistic. Let's say a Democrat gets 10 votes. The next Democrat gets 10 votes. A Republican gets 9 votes. The next Democrat gets 7 votes. And then the last 2 Republicans get 6 and 5 votes respectively. The way I read this right now, Steve, is the top 3 would win, 2 Democrats and a Republican. But then it seems to say that the next 2 candidates who would win would be the 2 Republicans with the least votes. So under that scenario, you would get 3 Republicans elected and 2 Democrats elected when 1 Democrat had more votes than 2 of the Republicans. So that's the thing that's kind of, and maybe I'm misinterpreting what it says.
If you take a look at the language at the end, it says that the 3 candidates receiving the highest number of votes shall be declared, maybe we said 3 candidates of the same party receiving the highest number of votes, but it doesn't necessarily work that way because we got it on the reverse end.
Should it say those those 4 candidates receiving the highest number of votes shall be declared elected, and the 1 candidate not of the same political party receiving the highest number of votes shall also be declared elected. It was easier sending somebody to the moon than figuring this out. I just want
It
to
really
say
was. I
Now,
truly
in
can't
the
believe how hard
5-year,
this
it's a
was.
3-2, the 5-year permits a 3-2 split, and the 4, not the 5-year, the 5-member, and the 4 members permits a 3-1 split, which allows for a 6-3 split. Yeah, I see the concern. I think I fixed it on the downside so that the 1 candidate not of the same political party as the party receiving the highest number of votes, or as simply receiving the majority of, achieving the majority of seats, I guess it is. I see your concern. Let me see if I could fix it with a couple of tweaks. And what I'll try to do is run it by you guys. I'll talk to Jim, try to run it by you before we send it over to the Board of Selectmen. The concept is agreed to. I don't think there's a substantive change. I'm going to try to come up and see if there's a way I can fix it a little better to make it work. I think it's fine, but I want to see if I can come up with a better way of clarifying it. I'm telling you, this language is in a lot of charters. So let me, but
Okay.
it's no excuse. I will play with it and see if we could do it. Yes.
And for,
Because you have
and
a
just,
situation, you could have a mixed top tier. But once one party achieves the majority,
right.
that's the key.
Yeah, by default, you have to have the minority representation. Steve, just for the public's benefit, the concept here was to make these Board of Ed races more competitive. We don't have that right now. And so I would, Steve, just look at that New Canaan and what's the other town language?
Bethel.
Bethel's
Bethel.
language. Maybe that can be a guidance on this, but that's the intent here, and
I will work on that first thing in the morning. But the objective is once the party achieves the majority, then we know who the minority is.
Right.
So it may
Correct.
not be the top 3. It could be 2 of the 3, and then the 4th guy makes the majority, and then we know who the minority ultimately is.
Correct.
Got you. All right.
Thank you. So, and thanks for your
Thanks for,
patience, everybody, on this. Appreciate it.
No, we want this to work. I don't want poor Jim Baldwin to have to go to court. I don't think there's a change until we get to, I think we've already done this one, right at the end of Article 3, Section 3.8. We eliminated the paragraph that was a RTM shall not diminish by ordinance, vote, or otherwise the powers and duties vested in the first select person.
Mhm.
I just want to make sure everybody saw that. I believe that was agreed to on the 6th of June.
It was.
Mhm.
All right. The next change is in 4.2B1A. We deleted the threshold for the consumer price index.
Yep.
Everybody all right with that?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Then on
we
the
voted
6th.
on that.
Yep. Just want to make sure. All right. The next one is in 4.3B6 or 5. I'm going to bring this up. The town attorney raised an issue. He had talked to, and this will show up in one other place in the budget section. In the budget section, I have recommended, and in the current version of the charter, the first select person has to have an explanation for the financial effects of the town's plan of conservation and development, which is required by state law, on the budget, on the capital side, could be on the general fund side. I think I'll defer to Jim if you'd like, but I think the argument is that they don't believe it is a significant financial impact in a direct way, using collective bargaining agreement, for example, as an analog. They don't believe it's analogous and would like to not have it taken into account in the budget process. Jim, am I stating that correctly?
Yeah, more or less, Steve, that's accurate. The POCD, I believe, is required to be looked at and amended or changed, updated every 10 years. And I may have that wrong, but nevertheless, I spoke with Jim Wendt, and he did not see any direct budgetary implications, particularly on an annual basis, that the POCD would present to that budget process. So it just seems to be unnecessary to be put into the charter in this section, in the budget section of the charter.
I'll recognize it to myself. I thought this was in here because to the extent I understand the POCD, which I've never seen, it says things like we need to repair these bridges, we got to redo those lights, we want to do a new field, whatever it is. And I thought the intent here would be that as we're doing the long-term planning, we're also reading that document. And to the extent it calls for stuff to be done, which should be in the capital plan anyway, but it's just another place to sort of maybe like a checklist to look at, like, are we really thinking long-term about things that the town needs to be done?
Yeah, this does not address capital projects like that. The POCD addresses the conservation and development in the sense of land which is dedicated to open space, land which is considered to be forest land for tax purposes, and that sort of thing. So I don't believe that premise is correct, that it deals with bridges and that sort of thing. This deals with zoning issues.
So to the extent, I'm making this up, somebody wanted to put a burn in to prevent flooding, and somebody's saying over the time we need to put something like that in to prevent flooding. That wouldn't show up in a document like this.
That's correct, and I'm 95% certain of that. I could ask Jim Wendt, but I'm quite sure that it's a very broad document, and it deals with different zones in the town that are recognized as I said, being open space or forest lands and that sort of thing. Those particular projects on a case-by-case basis would come up in the long-term capital plan, but it would not be part of the POCD.
So, not to belabor this, I was looking at the state statute. So it says the plan shall be a statement of policy goal, provide for a system of principal thoroughfares, parkways, bridges, streets, sidewalks, multi-purpose trails, other public ways, promote development in municipality, a general welfare and prosperity of its people. So just from that, and again, I've never seen one, so it sounded more structural, at least partly structural.
But it will not address it's a broad general principle, again, as to where roads are, where roads can't be, and that sort of thing, based on their designation under the POCD. But it is not going to address a particular plan. So in that sense, it's not going to be an annual budgetary issue. Those annual budgetary issues, capital plans and whatnot, are going to be addressed at the capital planning stage, and not necessarily not at the POCD stage.
Okay.
John Matola had a question.
Oh, where do you want to remove this? Is this on section?
This is section 4.3
5.
E5.
5. So you want to get rid of the language that says town's plan of conservation and development? You want to
And
strike
shall
that language?
further consider the financial effects of the town's plan of conservation and development as required by the general statute. So it would end at taking into account the next 5 years period.
Okay. And so, hey, Jim Baldwin, we do have a POCD, but did I mishear you or did I hear you correctly? That's something that's prepared every 10 years approximately?
I believe so. It's part of the master plan, or it's like a master plan.
All right.
It's a
I'm okay
planning,
with-
it's a planning document, generated by the zoning, the Planning and Zoning Commission.
And within that planning document, what would happen is if we have that document and out of that document has to come some capital expenses, they will show up later on in the 5-year capital plans that we're requiring anyway in this charter now. Correct?
That is correct.
Right. Okay. I'm okay with that change.
So much.
Okay, well, let's see how everyone else feels. I'm okay with it. And the other commissioners, Marlene's good. John, that's a yes. And Pam, that's a yes. Okay, we're all good.
Excellent. It will be stricken.
And Steve, that also where it comes up later in the budget process. I think that you said it's
I
mentioned
don't think
twice.
it's referred to. I just looked, in one
Okay.
of my other charters, it's in there because of its budgetary implications, but, I'll double check it to make sure it's, not there. I was just looking at it, I was eyeballing it quickly, but I will do a run and make sure it's deleted in the document. Although I may want to talk in a moment when we get to the strategic plan, not the strategic plan, the, whatever it is, we'll get to it in a moment. But the next issue is the language regarding staff. It's just a little further down, 4.3E. And this is where there's two questions here. The first is in the staff section, E, where we took out the shall appropriate sufficient funds language, modified it to the language that the first select person is entitled to appoint and may then employ others, and took out the languages provided for in the budget. So I'm hoping that language meets what you were trying to achieve.
John Matola.
I was looking at that today. Does my only concern on this, Steve, and everyone is, would that empower a first select person? And I guess maybe the language where it says may employ. We don't want a first select person who's going to use this provision saying, I'm going to have 30 people working in my office based on this section. Do you understand what I'm saying? I agree with the first part of this, that first select person should have a chief of staff, an administrative assistant or equivalent positions. But I'm a little concerned about the last section where it says it may employ such other staff for administration of official duties. So does that allow any first select person to say, I need 6 more people and the town has to fund for this? Do you understand what I'm saying? That's my concern. There's got to be a little discretion on the representative bodies, Board of Finance, and the RTM with respect to how big any first select person staff. And
But that's why I had the language the way it was originally, because I had the
right.
split between the essential about making sure that your chief executive has the essential staff. That's
Yeah.
why I had the language. It was vague. I agree on sufficient funding. And I also had the proviso on the other staff as provided for in the budget. So you're raising an issue that I had raised, but I thought you guys wanted me to eliminate. So, we could put the clause back in at the end for the remainder of employees and have the entitlement language in there. But that was the rationale. Is that,
I do think, and Jim's raising his hand, that the language where it says may would give any town body that's responsible for the budget some discretion at that point. But I just wanted to make it clear, and I'd like to hear what Attorney Baldwin has to say with respect to that,
Yeah,
on that.
John, this is Jim Baldwin. I appreciate your observation of that, and I think it's like some other things that we had in the earlier versions of this document, but took out because that's already understood. That being that the first select person may employ other staff people, and that's the case for all departments. You know, subject to appropriations being issued for that department to cover those salaries. So I would just suggest to the commission that you just remove the language about may employ such other staff as necessary, because I think that that's stating the obvious. And
Right.
to your point, it does not leave it open-ended, therefore, for those other positions to be at the sole discretion and the salaries at the sole discretion of the first select person.
So I would agree with that, so we can eliminate that language and just looking at it, it should read the first select person is entitled to appoint a chief of staff and administrative assistant or equivalent positions. Period, right? And then eliminate the next sentence, and then it could end with all such assistants and staff shall be appointed by the first select person and shall serve at the pleasure of the first select person. So eliminate that and may employ other staff necessary for the administration of official duty. That, and just so the public understands, that doesn't mean that a first select person can come to the appropriate bodies and say, hey, I need an extra so-and-so, and these are the reasons why, and it'll be subject to the budget process just like any other department is. Is that correct, Attorney Baldwin?
Yes, that's my thought as well.
So I would make that motion if anyone wants to second it or disagree.
I'll second.
Rogan seconded. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye, raising your hand.
Aye.
Passes unanimously.
Okay, so I'll delete that clause. In the next paragraph, F, Commissioner Iacono raised the question, the first select person shall appoint and the budget shall provide for, I think, and Pam, correct me if I'm wrong, you were raising the question whether we eliminated the language and the budget shall provide for. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, I thought we struck that, but perhaps I misunderstood.
Yeah, well, I may have misunderstood, so I just want to make sure I understand now.
I thought we struck it just because we were stating the obvious.
Everyone? What's everybody's
Yeah, I
thought?
mean, consistent with the preceding paragraph, that we didn't need to say is provided for in the budget.
All right.
So yes, I agree with that. Is there any objection to that by any
No
commission?
objection. And just for the public's benefit, that position is in the charter. It's a mandated position, so we would have to fund it.
It's good.
Okay, so we're okay with that deletion?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Commissioner Iacono was right and I missed it. Okay, thank you. I'm not proud of that, but I'm just pointing out for the record. The next change is in 5.7. Okay, this is what I was thinking about before. In Jim Baldwin, 5.7, we refer to the master plan for development. Did you talk to the planning? That's how the issue that we resolved a couple of moments ago came up. Did you discuss whether that master plan is in fact the equivalent of the PCOD, the Plan of Conservation and Development?
Yes, that would be the appropriate terminology.
So is it okay if I put the Plan of Conservation and Development in that, replacing the master plan?
Yes, I just need to zero in on the actual paragraph, if you could.
I'm sorry, section 5.7 B1.
It's on page 57, Jim.
Yeah, I got that. Thank you.
I raised that question, and the reason why I raised it is I thought master plan was an older nomenclature, and it might have been updated or changed to the plan of conservation and development, either through the general statutes or recent usage.
Yes, the bottom line is I agree that that should be replaced with the POCD.
All right, excellent. The next change is the beginning of 6.1. I added constable 6.1A, and I cleaned up the title. This is elector requirements for certain appointed town officers and members of boards and commissions. It was a more expansive title than it should have been. I forget whether Commissioner Wynn made that recommendation to me or Commissioner, the Vice Chair, Brogan, but I made that change. It's not a big change, but I just wanted to bring it to your attention. The next issue is an issue raised last week. It was voted down, but I wanted to raise because I think after I obviously listened to the meetings carefully, I think one of the concerns that was raised was not that there's a qualification standard, but that the qualifications could be established by ordinance. And
Steve,
I was,
what section are you talking
I'm sorry,
about?
very sorry. I'll slow down.
6.1.
6.2B.
Page 50, top of page 50.
It's in the green.
Yeah, for some reason it's green. I don't know why, but it is. We'll fix that. What I was going to say is that they should be established not by ordinance, but by the human resources or personnel director.
Yes.
And if that helps you, I was going to recommend that we do that. So if
Yeah.
What was the prior language in here before we added this? Because
this is brand new
clearly,
language.
This is actually fine. I was the one who raised that issue, and I think I was too broad sweeping in my motion to eliminate. And you're right, you zeroed in on what my biggest concern is. It was the ordinance part. So if you strike that, then you're establishing a best practice, and I don't have an issue with that.
Everybody okay with that?
Yeah,
John Matola has a comment or question.
I'm okay with that. Plus you will enable job descriptions to be updated in a much quicker manner if you strike that position.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly.
And
That was going to be a big problem.
I don't think our team has ever had that authority before anyway.
No.
No.
All those in
Problem, this is
favor?
language that I took.
Just
Yeah.
to be clear,
Oh,
we just need to make sure they do it.
okay, Chris Brogan has a comment.
we're deleting the words ordinance following the recommendation,
Right.
and leaving everything else the same.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Okay, I'm fine.
Yeah, we're any reference to ordinance is being eliminated as well.
Well, at the end, or may otherwise be designated by ordinance. That's not incorrect, though. Or that is correct.
I was taking that out because it's a new authority, as John Matola just indicated, that doesn't exist right now.
So couldn't they, I mean, if the RTM wanted to, under their general legislative authority, they can't decide job descriptions? I don't know why they would, but.
They can create a department, for example, but if they're making a recommendation, you'd want to comply with the charter so that the human resources director can develop a job description that is a best practice job description.
Okay, so we're taking it out in both places.
In both places.
Both places.
Okay, I'm fine. Just want to be sure.
I think that's it. In the next, minor change, but useful change in paragraph 6.4a. I was using the term appointing authority as a defined term we did a mini defined term. Again, the vice chair picked this one up, and we fixed that in 6.4A, and throughout the document, we're appointing authorities kind of defined now in 6.4A, and it is used going forward as a defined term. The next change does not show up in your document. The vice chair brought it up. Chris Brogan brought it up in separate consultation, 7.1A. The chief of staff is listed as an officer appointed by the first select person, and I'll defer to Chris. I think this might have come up somewhere else as well, but I'll defer to Chris for his thinking on whether this should remain there or not.
It came up in the
Actually,
public.
I know it was a comment that somebody sent in,
Mhm.
and I asked Steve whether it really made a difference, whether it's here. Does this somehow give the chief of staff some more whatever? And I won't speak for Steve. That was just my question, whether this really makes a difference.
It doesn't give the chief of staff any additional whatever.
So, in which case, I'm sort of indifferent to it then.
Yeah. So just leave it?
I would leave it
Yeah.
unless somebody else has an objection. Yeah.
The next change is a question that came from Commissioner Wynn. I think Commissioner Iacono also brought up in 7.5, dealing with the treasurer. We have the treasurer shall be appointed by the first select person and may be removed without cause. Commissioner Wynn raised the question, does shall indicate must? I thought we agreed to leave the position in yet, have the role assumed by the CFO, yet may not appoint one if not needed. So the question is, should it be the town treasurer shall be appointed or may be appointed?
Where are we now?
This is
7.5A.
7.5A. And the may actually make sense when you read the second sentence. This is what maybe, and I won't speak for Commissioner Wynn, this is what may have triggered his thinking. The fiscal officer may also serve as town treasurer. So.
John Matola.
I thought we heard a week or two ago that under some scenarios, we need someone with the title of town treasurer, right? So the
Not
way
the
I
title,
read
but
this
somebody
actually,
has to assume the responsibilities of a town treasurer.
okay, why can't the first select person just simply appoint the chief fiscal officer as the town treasurer? That's how I read this. Then it's done with.
That was my reading as well. I think that the language is fine if that's what the first select person wants to do.
Okay.
John Wynn, are you good with that?
I won't argue with 3 attorneys who were on the call. I'll just go with what they said. Four attorneys on the call, if I look
Oh my
correctly.
goodness. All right, then we'll leave it the way it is.
5 attorneys. The number's like an elevator. It's going up. 5 attorneys.
That's a dangerous situation. So 7.6, the next section, Public Works. I don't know if you recall, take a look at B 3 and 4. I think those comport with what we were supposed to be doing. Just please read them and. I think we fixed it after the last meeting. But several people have raised recently the issue of the engineering degree. Remember, we took that out as a requirement, but it's come back up in the last few weeks or last week or days. I didn't know whether there's any rationale for thinking about it again. I'm not stating a position, but it did come up. And
no, that's the reason why I tightened this language based on an engineer who had reached out to me. So that's why we made that change to address
and there's no
that
legal
concern.
requirement for it whatsoever. If you have a engineering department, you can certainly Director of Public Works does not need to have an engineering degree.
In that paragraph 3, though, we have follow HR following policy and procedures to appoint a town engineer who shall be. Should it be assigning a town engineer rather than appointing, which sounds like you're bringing in somebody new? They're going to assign someone in the town's engineering department with that responsibility rather than appointing.
I'll defer to the lawyers on that one.
I think Attorney Nguyen makes a good point.
I think it's an excellent point. I think it's an excellent point.
John,
Does
yeah.
Attorney Baldwin want to
elevator's
join
going
us
up.
on this, or?
No, I think that's a very good point, and I support the change that's been suggested.
Excellent. All right, next. Again, I think this was another Commissioner Nguyen comment in section 7.11C. I refer to, and I thought somebody had suggested this early on, the Affordable Housing Task Force. Has that been replaced with a committee?
Yes,
Yes.
So
It's a
should it be
commission.
the committee and not the task force?
correct.
Is it a commission or a committee?
Pretty sure they're a committee.
Yes, that's my recollection as well.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's the First Select Person's Affordable Housing Committee. Okay, got it. I'll fix it.
Well, it's right in the body, it looks like. It just needs to.
It's fine in the body. It was wrong in the title.
Oh.
All right, we're gonna have a change for a little bit here. Let's see. In I want to make sure everybody that I got this right. In 8.10, the Flood Prevention, Climate Resilience, and Erosion Control Board. I know the language has been accused. We've been accused of not writing elegant language, but did anybody see that comment?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The alternate members, I think we have captured the language. I think we took their language on that. And I will double check the transition provisions, even if they're a little off as we go over to the Board of Selectmen. We will edit them and fix them when it gets to the Board of Selectmen. It would not be a substantive change. Everybody all right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, excuse me, what number was that?
Well, this was 8.10C.
Okay, thank you.
I think that was Prue's voice.
It was.
Ethics, 8.15. What's the change here? Yeah, this is the, again, the transition provision. I believe everything works. I will double check to make sure that the transition provision works. I did it already, but maybe I'll run it by, go through it with Jim to make sure that the transition works. Remember, we have to move their dates from April to July, so we have to work out a conversion of their terms as their terms end. Everybody thinks it's easy to just change a date, but it doesn't work so well. Same is true with the library. That one I have to, that one I will work on before we send it over to make sure that the conversion, that the transition works there as well. Just have a few more changes here, guys. I do have a question. I saw an email. This is in section 8.16 D2. And Jim Baldwin might be a person who could talk on this. I thought we adopted language that they had requested. Is this language missing something?
Well, the truth be told, since your last meeting on June 6th, they came up with additional new language that addresses whether or not funds are to be deposited with the treasurer, and they had deleted that. And I don't think that the commission has the time or bandwidth right now to go into those details. And it has to do with that language being the existing language that's in there now, which we were tweaking, was placed in part because there was a bonding project, and they were repaying the town for the cost of those bonds with their the interest or gains from the principal investments. And those bonds are expiring in the next year or two. And they also changed the outfit that manages those funds, which are no longer reporting quarterly, but rather, I think, semi-annually. So this is a long way of me saying that we agree that it's going to be necessary to have a meeting with them to go over this language. And I think it's best that it be discussed at the Board of Select Persons level so that this process, your process, can move forward. And of course, anything that comes out of that Board of Select Persons meeting will be coming back to this commission for their consideration as well. But that's the thought process on the most recent changes proposed by the Library Board of Trustees.
Everybody okay with that?
So what I'm hearing is that there's a potential that we come back again just to hear library issues.
Well,
Hopefully that's all. Hopefully that's
potential.
all. Article 9, not much here, but there's a few things. In 9.1E, we made a change on the 6th to do two things. We eliminated the equivalent official language, it's a CFO language, and we made it clear that the consultation is with the leadership of the bodies, the first selectman, the chair of the Board of Finance, and the moderator of the RTM. So those were the changes in developing the budget schedule, the budget calendar.
Can I just ask one question on that one?
Yeah.
So we did do that, but it still says in there Board of Select Persons. Isn't the first select person the chair of the Board of Select Persons? So do we need to say Board of Select Persons?
I don't think you do. I was going to raise
Okay.
that, but I didn't want to be the one to offend them.
Okay, well, so I think we should just delete those Board of Select Persons right there.
Jamatoa.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay.
All right.
It sounds like a motion and a second.
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Yes, sir. Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
All right. The next change is in 9.3B, and you'll see that the structure looks a little different, but I didn't really change anything in the way of substance. This is the presentation before joint meetings of. I think one of the concerns and one of the things that people were confused about is that this made it look like there was one meeting. I know that the commission made it clear that it would be multiple meetings, but this makes it absolutely clear that there's an expectation that the joint meetings will be meetings and not a meeting. I also made it clear in here, I made a change that doesn't show up in here based on a request that somebody made. In 2A, the first select person calls the meeting to order, and the meeting then is facilitated, not in turn, but facilitated by the chair of the Board of Finance.
So you're going to strike you're going to strike in turn there, Steve, because it's not.
I will strike in turn. It doesn't show up in yours. It was forget who it brought up, whether it was the vice chair, whether it was you, Commissioner. There's a number of you who've been feeding me errata and cleanups, and so I made that change in the final document They just came in today. In 9.4A, I put equivalent, I've recommended that you place in the document equivalent language for the Board of Select Persons that the Board of Finance has and the RTM has, that in addition to these joint meetings, if they choose to have their own set of meetings afterward, they're entitled to do it. So that all that language is the equivalent language that you'll find in the section for the Board of Selectmen, I'm sorry, the Board of Finance, and for the RTM. So if everybody's okay with that, I'll just leave that language as is.
Okay.
I have no other issues in budget. Just one last issue. I don't know if anybody else has any. I put in language in 10.4 because I couldn't remember whether we agreed on the periodic review of the charter language. I had several commissioners suggest it. And so rather than not have the language, I wanted to draft it. If you don't want it, we'll take it out. So that's the last point, is whether you want to have a periodic mandated review of the charter every 10 years.
I recall there was a suggestion. I think maybe Chris, this was you who said it.
I think I started, and I know Commissioner Willian also favors it. He might have mentioned it earlier.
All right. How did the Pam?
And just, I'm not opposed to it. I'm a little concerned with mandating that they call a charter revision. I'd be a little bit more, I'd be easily on board with it if it said that we discuss, that the Board of Select person discuss whether or not they need to do it. What if the timing's not right? What if there's something going on and it's just not a good time to convene a charter commission? That's my concern. I do think this thing should be re-examined, but I don't want to make it so tight that if there's something going on in the world that it's not a good time to convene a charter commission, that there's just a little bit of flexibility there. And if I'm overthinking that, I'm open to that discussion too. I like it having it in a tickler file.
What if every 10 years they consider the appointment of a charter revision commission, that they're mandated to consider doing it every 10 years?
I agree with that.
That way it comes up, Steve, and everybody, that they have to look at it, so we don't forget to look at it. But maybe maybe if it's not the time to do it for whatever reason.
So shall consider appointing a charter revision commission. And then the rest of the language, by the way, and I put this language in here for a reason, it doesn't mean you have to wait 10 years. If in 2 years you decide you want to appoint a town manager, or you want to move to a council mayor form of government, good luck with that. Then you can do it 2 years from now, or 4 years from now, or 6 years from now. So the 10-year mandate doesn't foreclose you from doing it prior to the 10 years. And what you've done here is you've tickled it. I think the tickler file concept is the right approach to it. So I've never done that in a charter, but that's not a bad idea.
All right.
Yeah.
So we have a Pam, are you making a motion to?
Yeah, just to insert the word consider.
And John, were you going to second that?
Sure.
Okay. Is there discussion on that? All those in favor? It's unanimous. And Steve?
So unless somebody has anything else they want to add at this moment, this may be the point where you would actually approve the charter as drafted. and I'll take two subject twos. One, subject to Steve providing you with one last look at the language to make sure, particularly on that minority party representation, Board of Ed section, that I've got it closer to right. And the second is that you understand that I will be continuing to review the document for errors and internal references to make sure everything works. I ask my commissions and my boards of selectmen to give me that ability throughout the process. The Board of Selectmen will obviously see those changes, and if any of them are substantive, we'll certainly talk to the chair and vice chair and other members. If any of them are substantive, they have nothing else that they're going to have, they would send it back to you just to look at those. So this would be the time to approve the proposed revisions to the Board of Selectmen.
All right, so Pam.
I was just going to move it.
Please go ahead. Can I entertain a motion? So there you are there, Pam.
So moved. What Attorney Mendix had just said. I didn't write anything down, but.
Second.
All right, and that's seconded by Marlene. So here we go. All those in favor of submitting this document, the recommended changes to the charter to the town of Fairfield to the Board of Selectmen, signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
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 And that is unanimous, no abstentions or opposition. So great. Congratulations, everyone.
Yay.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. It was great working with all of you.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, absolutely. Do we want to talk
Yeah.
about next steps and dates or anything?
Yeah, that's the next item on the agenda. So good segue. Steve.
Well, and I'll defer to Jim or any other member of the administration who may be here. We have tentative dates not finalized with the Board of Select Persons, I believe on the 20, well, we'll send this over to the town clerk. And once we send it there, the clock starts ticking. The Board of Select Persons, I think, will be meeting with them on the 27th of June. A couple of the select people are challenged schedule-wise for the next couple of weeks, with a subsequent meeting on the 29th. That may, depending on how the 27th goes, that may be the public hearing and could be final action, but they've also reserved the July 5th for final action as well. So I think that the intent would be to move this quickly. On the 27th, I would encourage certainly the chair and the vice chair, and it's a small commission, would encourage every commissioner, if they can, to attend that meeting, because that's where we'll be presenting the document. As I said, the 29th could be further interrogation of us or a public hearing. It really depends on how things go on the 27th. So that's the time frame. There and depending on where they are, I mean, if they approve it, then we're done. Then you expire upon their approval. If they have recommendations, the document will come back to you in early July, and you would then turn it around to them within 30 days. I would think it would be much quicker than that. And at that point, you can only act on those items that they have brought to your attention. So you can't, if somebody came back and gave you the greatest idea in the world about the structure of government, we could not take it into account unless it comes from the Board of Selectmen. So at this point, we can only respond to the recommendations that will be made by the appointing authority. This was the last day you had full carte blanche to make changes in the document. When you send back to them at that point, it's an up or down. They can't compromise. It would be an up or down. So I usually recommend to appointing authorities to keep your recommendations to the commission relatively broad so they can be discussed and negotiated. So then when they come back to you, we can have something that you might be able to approve. The alternative is, if they send something black and white back to you, you've got to decide on the black and white, and then they make a final decision on the same basis. So either you accept what they have to say, or you could be rejected. So then it goes back to them for final action. If they approve it in whole or in part, they then prepare their questions for the ballot, which will be submitted to the Secretary of State's office in the first week of September. That's the process.
And John Mottola has a comment or question.
Thank you, Steve, for explaining that. I guess when we are before the Board of Selectmen, is that time period that we suggest, or at least some of us advise them that certain of these issues, I think, should be separate ballot questions.
Mm-hmm.
When is that appropriate to do that?
That's not a function of the commission, but it certainly is. It's entirely a function of the legislative body, but that doesn't mean the commission wouldn't have ideas on it.
Okay.
So my view on it is that you should think about it, maybe get those thoughts into Brian and Chris, and talk about those things that we may want to separate out. That's a political judgment. They ultimately make it. But if we have strong thoughts on it, it wouldn't hurt.
Okay. I got strong thoughts.
Okay, yeah.
I'm not going to share them with you right now.
Pam?
I just want to clarify for the public, when Steve says legislative body, in this case for the charter, that means the Board of Selectmen. I don't want people to be confused that the RTM sets the questions.
Exactly. The appointing authority is what I meant to say. Traditionally, it would be the legislative body. Actually, if the changes that you recommended initially went through, the RTM would be the next body that would be calling for a charter revision. But they, for purposes in a Board of Selectmen form of government, it's the Board of Selectmen that is the appointing authority.
So John, I think that there's a transmittal letter that goes with this to the Board of Selectmen. So stuff like that, I think we can include in that letter, but that's probably.
Yeah, John, and if you do have that, John, why don't you get those to me and to Brian ASAP? If there are thoughts about separating it out. It may be premature to do that now, but if you have thoughts about it, let us know, because I'm drafting that letter.
Yeah, all we can do is suggest, though. I mean, that's, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Can I just say, in these final moments before I go to Berlin, I just want to say that it's been, I've enjoyed working with all of you, and all 6 of you. I don't think our 7th member is here, for a long period of time. It's been one of the best commissions I've worked with, really an outstanding group. I appreciate everybody's comments on substance, mainly substance. I also appreciate your dedication to detail and being my additional eyes on the edits. As I say, we're going to continue, and I'm sure John Wynn and Chris Brogan will continue to look at the document as they have. But I appreciate everything that you have done. It's been a pleasure. As I said to you at the beginning of this process, I lived 4 years of my life in your town, and it's just an honor to have an opportunity to try to make a difference for the people of Fairfield. And I hope that we will have much success as this project moves forward. Thank you.
John Mottola.
Yeah, and a couple things. Steve, thank you very much for your help and guidance in this matter. I was going to say this before Steve started talking, and so I'm a little out of order here, but I do thank you, Steve, so much. For me, the issues that I think have to be at least considered to be separate questions is the RTM issue, and I think also the budget process issue. And I just wanted to make that clear for the people listening and for my fellow members of this commission. And while I have the floor, I do want to thank all of you. It's been a pleasure serving with you all also. I have a feeling we may be getting back together in a month or so anyway.
Yeah.
It's not over yet.
Just
I don't
in
think
case.
it's goodbye.
Yeah, thank you, and I appreciate it. And thanks again. And thank you all for putting up with me.
No,
I'm a little long-winded at times, I understand. So thanks.
it's not putting up. I've enjoyed working with every one of you as well, and thank you, Steve. And everybody brings a healthy perspective and dialogue to the conversation. I think it's been very beneficial. So there's never been a point of putting up from my perspective. So thanks, everyone. And we will be getting back together, I presume. So it's not goodbye. John Wynn, and then Marlene.
I agree with everyone's sentiments and regarding Steve, regarding working with each of you on a variety of topics. Attorney Baldwin, also your thoughts and input very helpful. And the public, we've gotten a lot of feedback from the public. We continue to get feedback. Everything gets reviewed and considered, and we really appreciate the thoughts and ideas that have come forward. A lot of those ideas have been incorporated into here, some possibly not, or maybe are outside the relevance of the charter, but we do appreciate everyone's thoughtful comments and submissions.
Marlene?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that same thing, echoing what everybody says. It's been great working with everybody. Steve, it's been great getting to know you and working with you also, Attorney Baldwin. And, you come into these processes not knowing I'm not an attorney and I don't sit on the RTM. So you come into these processes not knowing what to expect. And I didn't really know what to expect. I've never been on a charter revision commission and definitely have learned a lot. And it's been great working with each of you. So thank you.
Thanks. Chris?
Yeah, and I'd like to echo the same comments. This has been great to work on the commission with all of you. I've learned a lot. And I think, I hope this gets approved. And I think if it does, I think it is a great help to a town we all love very much. And it's been a great experience. Thank you.
Pam?
I agree. Thank you, everybody, for all of your work on this. It's been a pleasure getting to know everybody. And I echo what Vice Chairman Brogan just said. I think this is a very good product, and we all care very, very deeply about Fairfield. We wouldn't have been sitting on this commission if we didn't. And I know each one of us put that first and foremost in all of our decision making. And Steve, you're amazing. This has been a great experience. Thank you so much for your expertise and guidance. Truly, truly made this an impactful commission. So thank you, everybody.
Can I make one last point? And I neglected this up front, but one of the things I always tell commissions, I tell mayors and mayoral forms of government, first select people and leaders of the legislative body, where there's a legislative body, no matter what the relationship is between the appointing authority, which is often the legislative body, and the chief executive, that I always tell them that I will be relying upon the town attorney, the corporation counsel, the city attorney. Because when I leave, the city attorney, town attorney, corporation counsel is going to be living with this document. And I just want to say that Jim Baldwin has been just a great partner, because a lot of them don't pay a lot of attention to this, but Jim has paid a great deal of attention to this, has brought a lot of experience into this process. And I just want to say it's one of the best experiences I've had. I don't want to be demeaning to anybody else, but one of the best experiences I've had with a town attorney in all the charters I've done throughout the state of Connecticut for the last 25 or 30 years. So I just want to thank Jim, make a special thanks to Jim Baldwin.
Thank you, Steve.
I also wanted to, oh, sorry, I just wanted to make sure that we,
I look forward to watching Steve's band play in the New Haven area and elsewhere sometime, because we've had some offline
give me a gig down in
comments.
Fairfield. I'll come down to
Sherman
Fairfield.
Green.
Yeah, there you
Yeah,
go.
To the Sherman
that'll
Green.
happen.
Sign them up.
Yeah.
Thank you, Steve.
I also wanted to make sure that we thanked Prue O'Brien, who's been our recording secretary and the person leading our meetings and making sure we get on this WebEx. So Prue, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure working with you.
Phenomenal job, Prue.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. I very much enjoyed this.
Great. All right, well then I would, unless there's any other comments, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn, and we'll see everyone on the 27th.
There'll be final communication coming out from someone on that.
Seconded by John Matola. There's discussion, I guess. What is it, Marlene?
No, I said like we'll get communication about the 27th.
Yeah. All right, all those in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Have a good
Bye,
evening.
everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, everybody.